Hello and welcome to the Rajya Sabha TV discussions. Today's topic is that of simultaneous polls, the challenges and advantages. Now, what is simultaneous polls? This idea has been mooted time and again by various agencies, various politicians, and most recently by the Prime Minister himself before the winter session of the Parliament that is to be commenced from the 15th of December. The idea is that the elections for the central government as well as state government should be held simultaneously. This has several advantages and disadvantages. Coming to the advantages first. The first advantage is that of financial savings. Definitely, the election process in India is a highly, expensive exercise, and if elections are held simultaneously, there can be a high degree of cost cutting. Now, the issue is that should there be financial prudence, should financial prudence overrule the democratic processes, or should democratic processes take an advantage over financial constraints? That is one issue here. Secondly, politically surcharged environment will get toned down. Now, this is an important point because time and again elections in India results in a hyper sensationalization of various issues and a politically surcharged environment. Now, this has certain degree of impact on the politicians, on the executive, and this can impact the policy of the country. So a politically toned down environment can ensure better governance. Thirdly, governance and model code of conduct. Now, the model code of conduct in the country is prevalent because of repetitive elections being held in some part of the country. This indirectly impacts the governance. However, an analysis can be drawn here is that the model code of conduct is usually for 40 days before the elections. Now, when the center undergoes elections, 40 days of model code of conduct is implemented throughout the country during that time, and 40 days of model code of conduct is implemented during the state elections. So experts are raising a question that in total in a particular state there is going to be 80 days of model code of conduct from 5 years. So the question is that what should be the trade-off? Should 80 days within a time period of 5 years be an applicable time or a relevant enough time for the democratic processes, or efficiency needs to be improved and this 80-day period is too much of a taxing on the governance process and should be done away with? So these are some open-ended debates. Another thing is that of decisions in the political calendar. This is a very important advantage that is going to be achieved if simultaneous polls are conducted, because today major decisions of the government, major policy decisions of the government are timed with the political calendar and are often delayed, keeping in view of coming elections. So if there are simultaneous polls, the executive will get free of this compulsion and can act freely and more efficiently. Another advantage is that of a level playing field by neutralizing the influence of center. Now, an example of this is the recent elections in Gujarat and Himachal Pradesh, where the center government and the leader of the center government has played a very, very influential role in the canvassing of elections. So this is again important because if simultaneous polls are held, at that time there shall be no central government and elections for the centers and states will be held simultaneously. So the influence that the center government at that point can have on the state election is going to be minimized, so it can ensure a better level playing field. Another advantage is that of efficient use of personnel. Now, election process in India is a tedious one. It is the largest democracy in the world, and as a result of which a large amount of personnel is involved in the election process, majorly the teachers. So if time and again elections are being held, a burden is asserted on the personnel of different governments. So if simultaneous elections are conducted, this burden can be minimized as the personnel will be required only once. Another thing is that of support from many forums. The Prime Minister has voiced his opinion in the favor of simultaneous polls. The President has voiced his opinion. Several parliamentary committees have voiced their opinions. Sometimes courts in their opinions have asked the government to explore the option of simultaneous polls. So these are the advantages that simultaneous polls have. In gist, this is the conclusion from the discussion. Coming next to the challenges that simultaneous polls are going to have. First and foremost, elections in India are a method of referendum for the executive. Especially in the present scenario where the executive is all powerful and the government has a major number of a huge majority in the parliament. In such a scenario, despotic tendencies of the executive can be checked through frequent elections. So that is one disadvantage of simultaneous polls. Another thing is that it could be a threat to the democratic practice of continuous checks. This is similar to the idea of referendum. Thirdly, politically surcharged environment as a means of voter education. Now, this is something very important because India, right after its independence, has gone in for democracy and democratically elected governments, despite that majority of its population at that point of time was uneducated. And even more so now, the political education amongst masses continues to be low. And it is only that continuous elections and canvassing by politicians that voters are being educated. They are being informed about government policies. They are being able to criticize government actions. So this environment, politically socialized environment, has its advantages also. So completely doing away with this under the idea of simultaneous polls could be a challenging one. Another thing is that of issue of constitutional limitations and basic structure. Now, nowhere in the constitution there was the idea of simultaneous polls. Also, certain constitutional mechanisms which will have to be tinkered with to implement the idea of simultaneous polls come under the idea of basic structure. So this is an important point because cooperative federalism and the federal structure is under the basic structure, and doing away with different timetables for elections will cause major amendments, major constitutional amendments. So that will be another issue. Another example is that of Article 356, for example, the president's rule. Suppose that a simultaneous election is being conducted and one particular state, after a few months of its democratically elected government, there is a need for president's rule in that particular state. So in that case, what will be the further roadmap for simultaneous elections continues to be an unanswered question. So that is one idea. Another thing is that the federal principles and the state-centric issues. Now, if simultaneous elections are held, there is a huge tendency that state-centric issues can get washed away under major center-level issues. This is a major concern and is a major threat to the federal principles. This is also an example to this is also the recent 2014 elections, where there was a wave of a single party under the influence of a single prominent leader. Now, if this wave would have continued, then their voters could have had a tendency to vote for the same party even in states despite the state issues not being considered. So this is important. Another thing is that of issue of national, state and local level elections. India is a robust democracy. It has elections at national level, state level as well as the local levels. So elections, conducting these three elections under the same ambit to curb the problem of model code of conduct is a is a mammoth task for that matter, and a challenging one. So overcoming this issue is of primary importance. Next is that past experiences raises issues of sustainability. Now, despite the fact that the constitution never mentioned the idea of simultaneous elections, India did follow simultaneous elections up till the year 1967. However, after that, this practice could not be sustained. So, the past experience in this regard has been bitter. An issue is that if we re-implement this mechanism, how will we make it sustainable? So that is one important part that has been raised in the discussion. Now, coming to extracting opinions from this discussion, there are basically two opinions that can be extracted. First and foremost is that the idea of simultaneous election is a good idea, but it has several practical hurdles which as UPSC candidates, as students, you should be aware, and you should bring out this analysis in your answers on such any question related to this topic, that practical hurdles definitely exist and need to be overcome. Second is that going ahead with this idea in phases is a better way. That is one opinion that experts have made out, that rather than going for elections for the entire country, we can group few states, like 5 states at one time, and maybe we can increase the number of states undergoing elections at a particular point of time and experiment this idea so that we can learn with the process and make it more fine-tuned to finally go in for the major idea of simultaneous elections. So it is good to have to approach this policy in a piecemeal way rather than a all in one way. Another thing is that the application of this article, first and foremost, direct application, wherever you get a question directly, it is important. Secondly, it has application under the idea of electoral reforms, which is a major topic. Another application is in that of improving governance. Wherever you're supposed to discuss on improving governance, this idea can be given. So that is about this discussion. I thank you all for watching this video. I hope to see you all tomorrow. Thank you.